How good are you at spotting computer-generated imagery? How do you think you compare to the editor of a major photographic magazine? Or how about the jury of a world-class photojournalism festival? Well, that scale may be shorter than you think. This is the story of how one photojournalist fooled an entire industry of documentary photography by publishing a series of photos that weren't real. This is the story of the Book of Veles.
And I want you all to know that we are fighting the fake news. It's fake, phony, fake.
During the 2016 US election campaign, there were a slew of websites publishing stories with clickbait titles that pandered to the hopes and fears of Trump supporters. They all came from websites with American-sounding names, but these domains were actually registered halfway around the world in the small Macedonian city of Veles. With over 100 of these websites, Veles became the fake news factory of the world. The process was simple. They would take a mainstream news article, paraphrase its contents to avoid accusations of plagiarism, and make it shorter, more compact, so it's more likely to be shared on social media. Then they would republish it with a sensationalist title and a fake author name. The Macedonian teens who would run these sites would promote these stories and then just wait for the clicks to roll in, netting them a healthy cut of the AdSense revenue, sometimes even thousands of dollars per day. However, this scheme couldn't last forever. Several high-profile publications wrote exposés on these practices, and soon enough, action was taken.
There's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites. And
Google and Facebook purged and blocked ads from hundreds of fake news sites to curb the spread of misinformation. With their profits gutted, many of these fake news factories shut down. But Veles's brief time in the spotlight caught the eye of photojournalists around the world. One of these was Jonas Bendiksen, a Norwegian photojournalist with decades of award-winning work spanning the globe. The more Bendiksen read about Veles, the more intrigued he became. The town was named after the Slavic god of the underworld, who also had a reputation as a trickster. There was also a Book of Veles, allegedly discovered in the early 20th century. It was purported to be an ancient pagan religious text, but was later revealed to be a forgery. These layers of symbolism inspired Bendiksen to go see the town for himself. But Veles had changed since 2016. Many of the fake news factories had shut down, and it would be difficult for Bendiksen to capture the town as it was in 2016. Many of the people involved didn't want it to be identified, much less photographed. Then he came up with an idea. In a town of fake news named after a fake god with a fake scripture, what if he just took fake photos? Bendiksen decided he would take photos of Veles and then populate his images with computer-generated models of people and objects, and then see if the public could spot the fakery. He wanted to make a statement about the dangers of technology and misinformation. This would be a sort of visual Turing test for the photographic community, and that's exactly what he did. He travelled to Veles in 2019 and 2020 to shoot the backdrops of his images, while learning 3D modelling and computer lighting techniques from YouTube. He took pictures of each location with his regular camera, and then used a 360-degree camera to record the lighting at each spot. As he returned from his second trip in March 2020, COVID-19 was surging through Europe. Locked down in his basement in Norway, Jonas began poring over his work. He downloaded 3D models of people, animals, and objects, and began posing and manipulating them into his shots of Veles. He would use software to recreate camera perspectives and lighting, and then placed his framed and lit models into the shot. Bendiksen wanted to get caught, so he hid Easter eggs throughout the photos in hopes that people would notice something was off. For example, Veles appears to have a conspicuously high population of bears, and the Norwegian embassy doesn't seem to be built to code. Not content with just photographic fakery, Bendiksen wanted to explore the capabilities of artificial intelligence on the written word. He used an AI system to generate all the written content in the book. This system, called GPT-2, uses neural networks to learn how to generate text from user-submitted content. Bendiksen fed the AI countless articles and interviews about fake news, and the system spat out essays and quotes that he used for the book. With fake images and fake text, it was only fitting that he named this work after the mythical forged scripture, the Book of Veles. With his preparations complete, it was time to submit his pictures to the public. April 2021, Bendiksen starts giving sneak peeks of the book on social media and shows it to colleagues who work in prestigious photographic magazines and organizations like Magnum. Bendiksen expected to be caught right away, but to his surprise, no one questioned his work. He decided to only let a handful of people, including his publisher, in on the secret. June 2021, LAKEY's LFI magazine features some of his images, calling them an uncomfortable lesson in the harmful potential of digital disinformation, but referring to the project's subject matter, not the photographs themselves. July 2021, Magnum runs a promotional sale of prints of one of his images from Veles for $100. Still, no one suspects a thing. But Bendiksen wanted to go further with a more rigorous institutional test. His target was Visa pour l'Image, the biggest photojournalism festival in the world, held annually in Perpignan, France. Bendiksen submitted his photos for consideration and got accepted for an evening screening with minimal questioning. He waited for someone along the submission chain to raise concerns about his work. Maybe the jury, maybe the audiovisual team responsible for preparing his photo presentation. But there was silence. September 1st, 2021, photos from the Book of Veles are screened at Visa pour l'Image. Bendiksen thought that surely after the show someone would say something after viewing his photos on a massive screen. He waited 24 hours after to see if anyone would say anything. Silence again. Because his reputation preceded him, Bendiksen wasn't subjected to the usual checks and balances for this kind of festival, such as being asked to submit raw versions of his photos. At that point, Bendiksen felt bad. If others weren't going to expose him, he would do it himself. So he did what anyone would do in his situation. He posed as a young female photographer and began writing posts to expose his deception. Okay, he was actually much more careful about covering his tracks. Bendiksen bought a fake social media profile that had been created and aged to seem like a real person. The profile picture was generated by an AI, and he spent weeks curating her background, likes, and posts to make it seem like someone from Veles.
Photographer and traveling truth seeker.
Hold on.
Photographer and traveling truth seeker. Manu fan. Brexit hater. From Macedonia, based in UK.
As Chloe Miskin, Bendiksen wrote posts on Facebook and Twitter denouncing his project and claiming it was a fraud, hoping that it would gain traction. Eventually, some people noticed. Benjamin Chesterton, aka Duck Rabbit Blog, called Bendiksen out, suspecting that this was all a publicity stunt. The game was finally up. Bendiksen came clean right after, publishing an interview with Magnum where he told the whole story. Humanity had triumphed over the machines, but at what cost? Some praised Bendiksen for his clever social experiment, while others wished he hadn't leveraged his reputation and their trust in him to prove his point. It does make for a great story though, and it's the story of the Book of Veles that has springboarded a conversation about the dangers of technology, but also the vulnerability of prestigious institutions. Fake images in photojournalism are more common than you might think. Take this picture for example. Do you notice anything off about it? The repeating smoke pattern makes it look like someone's been trying out the clone tool on Photoshop for the first time. Well, this image was published in 2006 by Reuters, the supposed gold standard of photojournalism. But it was heavily photoshopped by the photographer, and Reuters didn't notice at first. After public outcry, Reuters cut ties with the photographer and fired a top editor. But how did this badly photoshopped picture get through in the first place? Are the people who review the images not aware of popular photo editing programs? Just like the editors of Visa pour l'Image have seemingly never seen a CGI person before? Hindsight is 20/20, but looking at some of these images now, They look like something out of a video game, like a bad version of The Sims or some sort of point-and-click adventure game. These days, all you have to do is spend decades building an award-winning portfolio of quality work, and over the years, slowly gain the trust of photo magazine editors and festival directors. Then you too can sneak past the gatekeepers of the photojournalism world. If these amateur 3D models can fool prestigious photographic agencies and festivals, then we're in trouble for what's coming next. Artificial intelligence has been playing an increasing role in photo editing over the past decade, with the proliferation of neural networks. This technology is not slowing down anytime soon, and it's becoming more accessible than ever. Recent big tech announcements have also opened up whole new worlds for virtual manipulation. As Jonas Bendiksen put it, how good are these technologies? How easy are they to employ? Could a nerdy photographer like me go on YouTube, look at a couple of tutorials, teach myself how to do this, and make something that is not perfect, but good enough for people to start buying and believing? Time to find out. Let's see if we can imitate Bendiksen and create our own fake images. You'll need a background picture taken by you, 3D modeling software, and a 3D model of a person. I picked up this model from renderpeople.com. Full disclaimer, I haven't used Blender before making this video, so this will be based on a few days of me tinkering around the program. I just want to show how easy it is for someone to pick up and learn these techniques. If there are more efficient ways to do certain things, let me know in the comments. So I'll start by opening up my 3D model file, Dennis the Businessman, with Blender. As you can see, we're in a 3D space. So here are some basic controls. To rotate your view, click and drag the middle mouse button. To move without rotating, just hold Shift and click and drag the middle mouse button. First thing we're going to do is add a camera by clicking Shift A, add camera. Now I can pull on the arrows to move the camera along a particular axis. If I hit the numpad 0 key, you'll be able to center your view on the camera. I'm going to open up a new window so I can keep track of the camera view in real time. If you want more refined control, if you just click on N, it will bring up the numerical transform controls, which will be handy later. The cool thing about this is that there are so many parameters I can change. So if I go on the right sidebar, I can actually control the focal length of the camera, telephoto, wide angle. I took the background picture with a 50mm equivalent lens, so I'll set it to 50mm. Let's move the camera a bit further back. Next, let's add a surface for Dennis to walk on, so his shadow will be visible on it. So I'm going to press Shift A, Mesh, Plane. Again, I can move it and adjust it. Now before we go any further, let's figure out where I'm going to position him, because this will determine both the lighting and final camera position. So let's go back to my background image. It is a bus stop, so let's have him waiting for the bus, right next to the shelter here. Actually, let's put him a bit further out here, so he balances out the image more, rule of thirds style. He's going to be jaywalking, but that's okay, because the bus stop poster says outlaws for life. So he's going to be an outlaw. Petty crimes only though. So now that we know his position, let's look at lighting. The main light sources here seem to be the street lamps, and there is one in front and to the left of where Dennis the jaywalking menace will be. The pole is here, but the actual lamp will be a bit further right here. So it looks like it'll be in front and above Dennis. So let's add that street lamp in Blender. I'm going to add a point light source, which will spread light in an even circle. So Shift A, light, point, and I will pull it up to street lamp height, slightly to the left, and in front of Dennis. To see what the lighting actually looks like, press Z and select rendered. It's too faint, so I'm going to go to the right sidebar and adjust the power of the lamp. Let's say around 320 watts. Gonna make some fine adjustments for our light source. Let's give it 4 meters. Now the light is in place, let's make some fine adjustments to the camera. So because he's going to be a bit off center, I'm going to move my camera to the left. I took the original picture holding up the camera in front of my nose, so that's roughly 1.6 meters on the Z-axis. Let's drag the camera back a bit so that it matches the distance I was from the bus stop. That looks about right. I'm going to turn him so that he is stepping in the direction of the road. And we're done with the positioning. Next, I want to add a green screen to this scene so I can later easily cut out Dennis and paste him over into my background image. It's a bit convoluted, but just follow the steps. Go to the compositing tab, then in the middle left side of the screen, select shader editor, change object to world, tick the use nodes box. We're going to add a mixed shader, so press Shift A, shader, mix shader, and drag it to the middle connecting line. Then duplicate the background window by selecting and pressing Shift D. We're going to connect the background node to the shader node, then click the color, switch to RGB, drag the green slider all the way to the right. Next, we're going to add a light path by Shift A, input, light path, and connect the isCameraRay node to the FAC node. So essentially what we have here is these two different windows will affect two different parts of the image. The background window will only affect the green screen on the background, and then this first background will affect Dennis himself. So I'm going to change the color of this background to white, and let's change the strength to 0.1. The green, I'm going to tone it down a bit, 0.5. And all of this was just to get a green screen background behind Dennis, which will make our editing easier in Photoshop. Next, I'm going to prepare Dennis to be exported. I'm just going to reduce the walking surface so that only the shadow area is left. Alright, that looks good. I think we're ready to export. To make sure we get a high resolution image, go to the right sidebar, click on the Output Properties button, and change the percentage size to 100%. Then go up to Render, Render Image. Once it's rendered, just press Image, Save, Save as Image. Okay, now comes the easy part because we'll be back in 2 dimensions. So open up your background image using Photoshop. I'm going to drag the render of Dennis onto the image as a new layer, rasterize the layer, and use the magic wand tool to get rid of all the green. Just gonna make some fine adjustments here. Gonna get rid of the ground as well, so that only Dennis and his shadow is left. Next, I'm going to use the burn tool to darken the shadow a bit. Now figuring out the size of Dennis is a bit tricky, but I found this cool website called dimensions.com. It has size references for all manner of things, and wouldn't you know it, they have covered bus stops there. So I'm going to drag that over, set it as a reference overlay, and adjust the size of our model accordingly. Now, one thing Jonas Bendiksen did to his book of Veles photos was to add digital grain to hide some of the fakery. So I'm going to add some of that as well. Filter, noise, add noise, let's say 5%. Do the same for the background image. One last thing I can do is match the colors between the two layers. This will make it look more natural. So all I have to do for that is select my layer, go to image, adjustments, match color, and in this case I will select my source as the background image, and okay. And there we go. Our fake image is done. What do you think? Is it convincing? Let me know in the comments below. Well, that's pretty much it for this video. This whole topic has been quite a rabbit hole of intrigue and deception, and I hope you can walk away with a sharper eye for fake images and a greater appreciation of the great power and responsibility that these technologies bring with them. As always, if you'd like to support the creation of more videos like this, just subscribe, hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next one.